Hi everyone, and this is Nav here from Dr. Arjun Astrology. And today we have Freedom Kaur with us, and we are going to be addressing mental health through Jyotish, through Vedic Astrology. And he'll be sharing today with us his research that he's been really working on mental health with Jyotish. Hi, welcome, welcome, Freedom.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. It's been a few years. We had a great
Yes.
podcast last. This was so much fun and a lot of information. Yeah, it's good. So, what can you tell us, like mental health through Jyotish? And yeah.
So mental health, I've been doing Jyotish since 98, and I met Pandit Sanjay Roth in 2000 and have been studying with him since then. And it's interesting because we use the A5 in the chart, the Aruda, the fifth house. And whatever condition is going on with the A5, that shows something that you have an ability to know a lot about, and to go deep into and understand. It's almost like it's the knowledge that you will have something special about. And I remember when I first met Pandit Sanjay Roth, maybe the second or third time and I was in his home, and he used to give classes on Sunday back then. And he looked at my chart, and based on the Aruda, the fifth house, he said, Nakshatra, that's what you should focus on, Nakshatra. And it's interesting, but Nakshatra is the realm where we see the mind, the mental well-being and things of that level. And even though I'm not overly focused on nakshatra itself, I'm focused on mental health, he hit it, his spotlight was able to see exactly where I would grow and expand and things of that nature. Before I met him, I was studying Ayurveda. And before that, I had gone to school and gotten a bachelor's degree, a 4-year bachelor degree in psychology. And after studying with him for a decade and a half, I went back to school. I got a master's in psychology, and I was working on a PhD in clinical psych up until COVID hit, and kind of put that on pause a little bit. But I have basically a clinical psych background with all the, everything that goes with that. And I learned the clinical psych being a full-time practicing astrologer. So every time I learned a concept in school, I was like, so how do we see this? Like, how does this, what they're looking at, translate into, how do we see that? And sometimes people, they do a short-sighted, and I call it a short-sighted transfer of a Western concept into Jyotish, but not doing the short-sightedness, but more if somebody's having depression, and the clients that had depression, how's that showing up in their chart versus the different types of depression that a person has. If somebody is diagnosed with a personality disorder and I'm looking at their chart, what in the chart, even if I didn't know about personality disorders, would I be seeing as what is causing a problem with them? And so really from that level, looking at how does this Western psychology world relate, not map, not transfer, but relate, because not change, just staying strict with the Vedic astrology, no altering or changing because of the Western education, but learning the words. For in Jyotish, we might just call it, oh, that's an eclipsed something in the chart.
Right.
How does that, like, what is the terminology that the mental health element of that gives in a human being? So I've been really, and the big thing that school did for, going back to university did for me, is it gave me the terminology and the understanding, and also the a lot of clinical insight into these disorders that I can, then being able to look at a chart and say, oh, you've been diagnosed with this and this. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's what the doctors were trying to decide, did I have this or did I have that? And it's like, well, every person that has, this has this combination in the chart. So to me, I see it more as this diagnosis, not that. And it's been pretty spot on after a while.
Do you feel that
Jyotish,
yeah. Sorry, so do you feel that through Jyotish and through looking at the chart, we have more clarity of what's going on than versus someone who's not having the knowledge of Jyotish or way they can just the psychologist or doctors,
Yeah. So the thing is, we can see more if you know what to be looking at.
Right.
And as far as treatment wise goes, a lot of Vedic astrologers aren't taught the different treatments that are available in psychology. So they don't know, oh, when there's this combination, it's better to go to a cognitive behavioral therapist than somebody who's doing somatic psychology. The average Vedic astrologer doesn't differentiate in that way, that they could, because the chart clearly shows which forms of Western psychology are going to work better. But as far as what's actually happening in the human being, if you know what you're doing, what would take the average psychologist probably 10 sessions, you're already starting with that knowledge.
So basically, you're able, with the psychology background and doing having a combination of Jyotish and psychology, you're able to see through the chart what's going on, and then you're able to address what kind of treatment in Western will work for that chart combination. So it's much easier for a person, and they save a lot of time, money, and energy.
A lot of time
to go straight to who needs to be, which energy is going to work according to their charts.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And then sometimes we have, I don't know if you've heard of people in therapy 10 years. There's people who they've been with the therapist for a long time. And just giving them a Vedic remedy for what's the root cause of their unwellness, giving them the Vedic remedy, the right mantra and puja, all of a sudden they have huge breakthroughs with their therapist that they wouldn't have otherwise. So the Jyotish is also a major support in this way for mental health.
That is so amazing. And that's what we're needing right now. I mean, there's a lot of mental health, a lot of supporting that's needing at this, after COVID.
Exactly. And then there's the conditions that the person just needs yoga.
Yeah.
It's the therapy is just a Western push, and really some yoga that takes them inside, and they're spending time with themselves and breathing more deeply, and they'll work through everything on their own. But based on the chart, do they need more help, or is yoga going to be sufficient? So we have the capacity to be able to see this.
Wow, that is so helpful. That is so helpful, because a lot of time people who are not even, much connected with Jyotish in general, and they'll go for talk therapy, they're going for different therapies, and they're not able to find out what's going on. And sometimes you just look at the chart and able to guide them through, and they're like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. So it's a wonderful, wonderful science, right? If we know how to use the right tools, right?
If we know how to properly read the chart.
Yeah.
And where a lot of people go wrong with mental health is they only look at the moon. They act as if the moon is the mental realm. And we have 4 houses in the chart that are primary for mental health, but every house in the chart, every single house impacts mental health. For example, the 3rd house, that's our parakrama. That's like how we're trying to get things in the world. Are we being too aggressive, or are we being pushovers? And some people are having difficulty in life because they just don't have the parakrama. They don't have that push to overcome an issue, to stand up for themselves, to or they're just really going too aggressive at something. And that can destroy a marriage. It can destroy a family, being too aggressive. And that's the third house. That is a mental health reality. That is the way a person is mentally engaging with the world. If we look at the 11th house, who associates that with mental health? But that's all about our planning. Are we planning? Are we organizing in the right way? Are we putting things together? Are we, if there's doshas in the 11th house, we get these scattered, disorganized people that causes all kinds of problems, right? So the sixth house, Lugna Lord or Moon in the sixth house and Venus as well, will bring all kinds of conflict. It can make a person very conflictual and picking on things, criticizing things. And this causes all kinds of disturbances in their life. This is a mental reality. It's a mental happening, this overcriticalness. So, and Venus particularly ends up being, it's a real complaining combination. There's this lack of appreciation that is existing, and there's this constant complaining. And it'll often show up in relationship after a year or two, and that their partner is not doing anything right. That's also a mental health element from the Vedic definition of mental health. Because in the Vedic definition of mental health, anger, envy, jealousy, egotism, all of this is considered a mental unwell-being.
Right.
Not just what the Western medical system classifies as mental unwellness.
And so these things, like you had mentioned, 4 houses that I look at, you usually look at D1. I mean, I always ask that question: is it prominent look at D1 or other charts that we look at for this?
For mental health, everything has to show up first in D1.
Okay.
The other Vargas will refine what is happening there. But if the factors of mental health are strong in the D1, then it doesn't matter what problem is happening in a Varga chart, because you will have the capacity to overcome that issue. There's people that get addicted to something, and on their own they can quit. And then there's other people who ruin their life with an addiction. So even though the D30 and the D6 can give us these addictions, how we handle that addictive tendency is in the end going to be the D1.
What would be a combination for addiction in the chart? Maybe just roughly.
Yeah, well, roughly. There's and so we have different types of addiction.
Yeah.
There is, like, for example, one of the most common alcoholic combinations is Saturn being connected to Moon, being connected to Lugna, and being connected to Aruda Lugna.
Okay.
Saturn connected to the Moon, the person, when they drink alcohol, it meets them emotionally. They're emotionally pacified by alcohol. If Saturn is with the Aruda Lugna, then they're social drinkers. And they can manage social situations with alcohol. If Saturn is connected to the Lugna, then there's an actual physical dependency potential with alcohol. And so if we have 3 of them, we get into a realm where we have a high likelihood of alcoholism. But in order for that alcoholism to happen, the Moon needs to have a little bit more of a dosha of some sort. It needs to have some dosha that allows there to be addictive tendency. Otherwise, the person knows, hey, like, if I drink, it's not good. And so they avoid it. But if the Moon was strong, and otherwise with the dosha, they don't have that capacity to stop the alcohol use. Then we have another type of addiction that is more of a compulsion, where the person is under a compulsion to drink. They're under a compulsion to do something. And there's all kinds of negative type addictions. There's people addicted to lying, addicted to various sexual things, addicted to different types of drugs and such. And these compulsions, and so we have the ability to differentiate whether alcohol is a compulsion issue or whether it's one of these other factors. And if just two of those factors and not three are being indicated, we know where we can pull the person out of alcoholism. But when it gets into compulsions relate to what Ayurveda calls bhuta. And bhuta is, they say it's like a possession. There's something taking over me, making me do something out of my control. And whether we interpret bhuta as, well, it's a spirit outside of me that's making me do something, or whether we interpret it as, hey, there's this part of myself that is disconnected and broken, and that is making me do something. And in order to understand this bhuta vidya in a really deep way, we have to have a complex understanding of Bhadaka. And you know, Pandit Sanjay Rath puts a lot of emphasis on Bhadaka and Bhadakesha, and there's a three variations of how Bhadaka impacts mental well-being. And the Bhadakesha planet will always impact mental well-being. It's just, is it impacting yours, or is it impacting your uncle, or is it impacting your mom, or is it going to impact your kid? There's always some addiction somewhere in a family. I mean, most people don't share about that, but the people that you know closely, you know they have somebody that is having problems in their life somewhere. And that is relative to how the Bhadakesha is playing out in their chart. But it's a much more, you know, we can't oversimplify the Bhadakesha, and that's a deep topic in and of itself. But that's where we get that compulsive addiction versus the other sort of addiction that we see with Saturn, Moon Aruda Lagna, and Lagna association.
So what would be the healthy way to deal with somebody who is numbing their emotions? For example, let's like Saturn Moon or Saturn connected to Aruda or Lagna.
So before we go into treatment, let's look at a few other factors.
Yeah, sure.
And then we'll talk about how to look at it. I think just to
sure.
Because, and so we just talked about Saturn with Moon, but and so Moon is a core factor, but it's only one factor. And whenever we look at the Moon, we have to look at the Moon and the fourth house. It's never just the Moon. Because if there's a benefic in the fourth house, even if Moon is afflicted, we have this inherent capacity of family that's going to be a support for us, an early family life that's going to support us to overcome the issue that the Moon is dealing with. And vice versa, if the fourth house is having a lot of issue, there could be a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of early life trauma and issues that are causing all kinds of problems. But if the Moon is strong, then our own mental well-being is standing up, and our mind is helping us grapple with and overcome the early life trauma. So we can have it either way, that our present state is helping us overcome what was in the early part of our life, or the early part of our life is uplifting us and helping us overcome our mental situation. If both are good, we're awesome. If both are good, the Sanskrit term is called kalyana. If both of those are in wellness, and I translate kalyana as agreeableness. It brings a more agreeable person, a person who's easy to get along with, gets along with people in well. If those two combinations become afflicted, then we get either the Rosha, which is somebody who has anger issues and is overreactive, or we get somebody who has moha issues, meaning they're closing down, they're avoidant, and so we see all this from the Moon in the fourth house. But then we also have the lugna itself becomes crucial for mental health. And it's the lugna, and the lugna lord acts like the sun. Wherever the lugna lord is, it's like the sun. And we know in the Western astrologers, they're all about their sun sign. And with Vedic astrologers, we're a little bit more about the lugna. It's because for us, the lugna lugnesha is this solar energy in a person's life. And so the sun is this real sense of personality, and the lugna is what that personality is. And so lugna and sun, if we start to have issues there, we start to go into the realm of personality disorders in a person. And there's that, which is a whole realm of mental health in and of itself. And in the Western world, they consider it one of the hardest realms to treat. But from a Vedic perspective, we treat it just like all the other realms of mental health. So, and then our other core factor is Jupiter and the fifth house. So the fifth house, that is your cognitive function. That's like how well the brain is actually working. Where the fourth house, that's your emotional state. That's how you're emotionally processing and feeling about the world. And feeling about the world versus thinking about the world are two different realms. And so the fifth house and Jupiter gives us an indication of is the cognitive function working in a proper way. And sometimes if a person who is having cognitive function problems, they're going to a therapist who works on emotions, how are we going to get benefit?
Right.
Or if a person has emotional issues and they're with a cognitive behavioral therapist, they're missing the realm that is malfunctioning. So with those core and knowing that every house has an impact in mental well-being, and I just picked two, but we could go into every single one if we wanted to. But then these core functions are first, fourth, and fifth. And so how did you ask the question? You were talking about how do we remedy or how do we work with? What was the question?
Okay, yeah, I'll ask the question. I have another question before that. So if somebody,
Okay.
how, so there's so much there's a lot of autism these days, right? But there's a lot of like spectrum, So this
Yeah.
can also be seen from the child's chart, because a lot of time parents, I get a lot of clients, the parents are like, okay, in school they're saying it's a slow learner, and then they make them go through a lot of different assessments, right? So it can be seen from the chart if the person is so slow development, autism, or they're really on a low key spectrum. Like this can be seen with the combinations, right?
Autism is one of the hardest elements to see in the chart. And it doesn't actually fall under mental health. It actually falls more into, even though it is cognitive development, it's considered more of a physiological condition.
Okay.
And when we go and just, I don't want to kind of, we would go a very different direction if we go into that.
Yeah.
But in that spectrum, there is quite a lot of variation. And just for legal purposes, I have to be very careful how I speak about autism. But Ayurveda can do a lot. If in the early stages of child development. Right. And just as a side note, there's one Ayurvedic doctor that I was working with, and he said, he decided just to throw away whatever this diagnosis is. And he said, I'm just going to look at the symptomology and treat symptomology. Right. And he's been doing a lot of, and it doesn't always work because there's quite the spectrum, but he's been doing Ayurvedic therapies for Jwara on these children. and been having incredible results.
Oh,
So both with Ayurveda and the right mantras for doshas in the chart, we can enhance a lot. It doesn't always mean we get rid that they're 100% normal or like cured, and it really depends where on the spectrum we are
right,
with.
right, right,
But
right.
the key is it's not a mental condition, it's a
Okay,
physiological condition. Just to
interesting.
differentiate, it's a physiological condition that impacts cognitive function, but it's not primarily cognitive down. It's physiological up.
Yeah, but it can it be seen through the chart though, even though if it is not mental, like can it be seen or
There's factors, but it's one of the combinations where there's about 10 different factors that all have to line up.
right?
I have my students, it's a requirement that they do research, and we've had a
Okay,
few interesting research projects on autism, and we
interesting.
even had a research project on the parents of autistic spectrum children. And
Interesting.
it was quite interesting to see the combinations not only in the children's chart but also in the parents chart. That this is and whenever a child has a condition, there's always a parent-child relationship with the condition, because your child is not the only one dealing with it. The parent is also. So
Right.
it's a shared karma happening.
Okay. Okay, so back to my question. The question I
Yes.
was asking was, for example, like, Saturn moon or Saturn connected to Ruda or Lagna. And you said these people, like, for example, if they're drinking alcohol, numb their emotions, right?
Yeah.
So if the person had to go healthy way, what treatment they or anything they would do to deal with their emotions?
Yeah. And just I work in a very integrated way where I integrate the Vedic remedies, yogic remedies, and Western medicine remedies. So
Right.
so I work in a very integrated paradigm. If we stay in the Vedic realm, or we can actually mention all of them. We can go
Sure.
into from the Vedic realm. The tradition of Achyutananda Das that Pandit Sanjay Roth teaches, um, in in how to say, so and just so there's what our tradition does, and then there's what is very common that I see
Mhm.
that is a very much of a band-aid, and the band-aid would be in a moon Saturn conjunction, or where Saturn is afflicting moon, Aruda Lagna and Lagna, and so we have alcoholism. The band-aid would be do Saturn pujas, go to the Saturn temple, and so it trying to pacify Saturn. And I call it a band-aid because it'll work for a little bit.
Right.
It will give a result, but you've just it's kind of, if you pay off a gangster, they go away and you're good for a little bit, but they're going to come back
Yeah.
because they don't just want one payment. They want regular payments. And you
Right.
get to where our sattva graha in the condition. And if you notice, we did Lagna Sun, fourth house Moon, fifth house Jupiter.
Mhm.
Those are our three sattva grahas. And so when that Saturn moon has an issue, it's the moon that we want to focus on. We want to make sure that we are uplifting that moon. And we have so many remedies in the Vedic world for working with the moon, whether it's a Chandra Graha Puja, whether it's taking and I said Saturn, but it could be a Saturn Rahu conjunction. It could be conjunct Rahu, aspected by Saturn. So based on the nature of the conjunction, we could take the moon into its Devi Rupa.
Mhm.
And so if it was conjunct Saturn only in a sign of Saturn or Mercury or Venus, then we could take that as a Kali Rupa and have Kali Puja done and Kali Mantra. if it by chance was conjunct Rahu instead and just aspected by Saturn, maybe from the Lagna or in some like this way, then we might want to use Durga as a primary. So it's not just one deity that's going to help with that, but what is the Devi Rupa, the moon, is showing itself as. And by working with that form of the Devi, we are going to strengthen the moon and strengthen the moon in such a way that the sattva inside of us increases. And when that sattva increases, we're not just avoiding the alcohol. We would be actually not desirous of the alcohol. And that's the real healing of an alcoholic, is that they don't want that. They're like, I'm happy as I am now. I don't like because the thing is, when the moon has that Saturn nature, it wants to close down and turn off. It doesn't want to feel. That a Saturn moon doesn't, there's heavy, sad emotions there. And the desire is, let me do something that I don't have to feel. And alcohol is awesome for that. It says, oh, here we go, like, turn your feelings off. You don't have to feel anymore. Mm-hmm. And Kali says, oh, we're gonna, instead of not feeling, we're gonna feel at a deeper level. We're gonna feel the suffering of the world in a way that I can bear this suffering. Mm-hmm. And so Kali empowers the moon to have that feeling. And Durga, Lakshmi, they all have their ability when we use the right rupa, the right Devi rupa, the ability to give the moon what it needs to digest the world, to be working with the world, to emotionally be able to process the world without the tamasic or rajasic elements that create mental unwellness. So we have this from the Vedic side. From the yogic side, we have various types of meditation that can be done. I work a lot with Pratipaksha Bhavana, which is a core practice that's done in the yoga tradition of the opposite of the negative emotion and meditating on that. I also work with various types of dharana that are in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, of different types of ways to hold the awareness in certain parts of the body that actually will strengthen the moon and the sattva. But all with the goal of, let's make this moon strong, let's make the sattva strong. And then with the moon, we are going to be working more in the realm of emotion-based therapies, attachment theory type, attachment theory, attachment, and they call it, it's not the Vedic concept of attachment, but what attachment means in the Western psychological world, which is, how does a person attach to their mother when they're born? And it's based on the first year of life. And how the baby is treated in the first year of life, which we know from in the Vedic tradition, in Naisargika Dasha, that the first year of life is ruled by the moon. So basically the conditions of the first year of life and how that formatted an individual, and what do we need to alter that format. So those would be the realms that I would work in. And when we go into that psychological, there's also multiple variants in that realm that we also have potential to utilize. But all in that realm of psychodynamic psychologies.
That is so cool. This is a wonderful research. I mean, this gives a lot of information and healing and just a lot of answers to a lot of people, right? Yeah. And it's interesting that how it all comes with their birth time and birthday, and it can give us a lot more of a guidance, in every aspect of life, mostly.
Yeah. One of the funny or interesting elements is we see the Saturn moon. Yeah. And with the Saturn moon, it shows from it gives what the Western psychology calls avoidant attachment style, which means somebody that when things are really emotional, they just close down. They don't, the people that don't write you back when if you're upset with them, they just disappear, they avoid you. And or the people in relationship who never talk up enough, who don't really share their emotions. And so this is the Saturn moon Sambandha energy. Sometimes Saturn in a moon in a Saturn sign, Saturn in the fourth house, Saturn with the moon. All of these give this type of emotional quality. Now, in the Western psychology, they say that this kind of personality is created from the mother not showing up for the baby, for the mother not giving the right amount of attention to the baby. So the baby didn't get enough attention. And because the baby was crying and mom didn't come, they basically turned off their emotions so that they're like, okay, no one cares about me. I'll turn off the emotions. And
Right.
so the Western psychology says this is why a person is like that, because the mother treated them this way. They are feeling like this and acting like this. But yet at the moment of birth, this combination showed up in their chart. So it means that the person had karma to be born to a mother who would ignore them, to a mother who would not be as available to them as they needed. And an emotionally unavailable mother. Like it's there from whatever they did in their last life, they're coming into this life into an emotionally unavailable context, which formats them in this way. So where the Western psychology gives us how mother acted, the Vedic is telling us what the impact is going to look like. And we see it as a karmic situation. They see it as, oh, this happened, so this is how it unfolded. But so we're so much deeper at the root than the Western psychology. And at the same time, the Western psychology, there's like a huge amount of research of how the baby was treated and how they're acting that is so insightful of what a Saturn moon combination actually gives from a predictive purpose.
And I guess when they're an adult, they can also feel acceptance. If you're just saying, I came in with this karma, then you take the responsibility and acceptance, and not acceptance of the mother too, that it was karmic. It wasn't like I was meant to go through it. Yet you can still go through your feelings and still get the therapy and still heal. But I think it really, once you have that acceptance, it really solves a lot of your problem. Because it's like you're not in the blame anymore.
You're not in the blame. You're not blaming mom. My mom didn't do this. That's why this and that. It's like, actually, it was my karma to have that kind of mom.
Right.
Okay, so you mean I can't blame mom anymore? Nope, you can't blame mom. It's all you. It's all you. And we don't say it's all you, bad. We say this is the karma that you came in with. So let's not blame anybody else. Let's and not to turn it into a blame put down, but to turn it into a let's be responsible, and also let's be responsible for your healing. You're responsible for the condition, and you and only you as an individual are responsible for your healing.
You have to do the work.
Mom might have been whatever way she was, or there might have been whatever fighting in the house or trauma in the household, but it's this was your karma, and you have the potential to do these mantras, these pujas, these practices to overcome this karma. And it's really quite interesting that when we have, and particularly with the moon doshas, sometimes with the sun doshas as well, you can see when we have mother's chart, when we have, somebody comes and they give their mother's chart and their kid's chart, and you can see it being passed down right through the generations. And when a person, they've been doing the remedies, they've been doing the work before they have the children, it's amazing. You can see how much they actually healed by looking at the child's chart and seeing how much the child got this dosha that's been being passed down. but
Yeah,
you
so
can see it generationally. Yeah,
someone has to do the work, stop, do the work, and do the clearing.
exactly.
Clearing, right? Yeah, that's interesting. So, Freedom, I had a question. You know how you started, and then you said talked about A5, right?
Yeah.
And the nakshatra. So, can you please elaborate a little bit on that? How, like, how do we, what do we see from that? Just
From the A5.
A5, yeah. You said that's Aruda 5, right?
Yeah, a root of the fifth house.
Okay, Aruda. Okay.
A root of the fifth house. So do you know where your root of the fifth house is?
I can check.
Your where's your fifth lord placed?
Fifth Lord is in the first house.
And as which graha
It's Jupiter.
is Jupiter? So the A5 is in the ninth house then.
Okay, that would be Cancer.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And so are there any grahas connected?
With the moon.
Yeah, with the A5 in the ninth house.
So you mean any planet in the ninth house?
Yeah.
No, because it's ruled by moon, but there's no planet in there.
It's ruled by moon, but no planet. Um, and so how we calculated that is from the fifth house. We calculate 9 houses to the fifth lord.
Okay.
And so 9 houses to the fifth lord, and then from the fifth lord we count 9 more houses, which is our ninth house.
Okay.
And so same from the house to the lord, and then from the lord that many more, that same amount of houses. So because it's in Cancer, there's no planet there. So we're in a pretty general Cancer fifth house combination. Fifth house, Cancer ninth house combination, right? And so ninth house is worldviews, perspectives, under the way people understand the world. It's Cancer. It's how people feel about the world, how people see the world, how people are, how larger, how communities have a viewpoint of the world, how communities, their spirituality, their spiritual practices, their purposes in the world. So to me, I would say that if I was advising you, I would say always end or start your interviews with some level of tapping into the person's worldview, how they feel about the world, how they something of that nature, and digging into that level of
The person
detail.
I'm interviewing, I would ask them.
The person you're interviewing, yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah, because an interviewer is going to ask the best questions about something that they have a really insightful nature of. And if your insight is the ninth house Cancer, if that's your insight, then how does a person feel about the world, or how they feel about a certain perspective? Even if you picked a certain, how do you feel about, and just starting with that or ending with that, it's going to open up, and you'd be able to go into a person's perception of something in a deeper way than the average person would, and also be able to understand in their chart, why do they have the beliefs that they have, because of the 5 in the ninth house in that way.
Cool.
So
Thank
like this. And do you have any children? We can do one more if you want.
No children, no.
Okay, no children yet.
No.
And but Jupiter in Lugna with the as fifth lord in Lugna, there's a love of children there, right? And
Oh, I love kids. Yeah, I
yeah,
really,
so
really. They love me, and I love them.
yep. It's there. It's
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
the all right. And so in this way, whatever, and just as an example, if we had Mars in the ninth house with that A5, then Mars would be the legal views, the legal opinions of something. So is it legal to do this? And there was a big debate about, was it an all women's temple that men were going into, and all men's temple that women were going to? What was that little?
No, I'm not sure.
The controversy in South India, there was.
No. Was it recent? No.
Yeah, there's so what is the law about? Can they do this? Can they not? That would be this big, that would be where the A5 would have all this insight on the yeah. And if we took instead that A5 in Cancer in the 10th house instead of the 9th, and we just left it Cancer by itself, then it's all about profession, how the person is working, what is going to be their optimal career views, and how are they going to be the most successful in the career, and have the most and Cancer is a very prosperous sign, so we would be talking about prosperity in career and also fame. Cancer is a very fame oriented sign when it moves to the 10th house, and so we'd be talking about fame and wealth, and all of that would be the insight that you would have. And not that we can't have that insight anytime, but it would be that place that you have a special insight that you can understand better than other people. The A5 gives us that specialty.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for answering that, Freedom.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to share before we close?
No, I think
We're good?
we talked, we covered some big ground. The big thing is just some people, they're just like, oh, is it based on the nakshatra or the nakshatra lord, or based on the moon sign, or we really human beings are integrated, very complex people. And so we have to make sure that when we are looking at mental health, we're not oversimplifying the chart, because we aren't simple. We are complex human beings. And a real integration of every planet, every house on its psychological level, the impact that's having, the strength of the sattva grahas, and afflictions, like every element of that is going to show up in a mental health condition.
Perfect. Thank you.
So key is don't oversimplify. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I hope you guys all enjoyed this session with Freedom, and we will come back with another topic, maybe relationships or more on mental health. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's